In a galaxy where ancient dragon warriors command respect across 1,000 star systems, where their mere presence can silence entire space stations, and where their battle scars tell stories of conflicts that shaped civilizations, what could possibly surprise a creature that has lived for millennia? The answer lies not in grand gestures of power or displays of advanced technology, but in something far more precious and rare in the cosmic community: genuine human kindness offered without expectation of reward. Aboard the luxury cruiser Stellar Majesty, traveling the prestigious Andromeda Sol route, passengers pay fortunes for the privilege of comfort during their 3-week journey across the void. The ship's first-class section is reserved for diplomats, wealthy merchants, and decorated veterans from across the galaxy's most powerful species. It's a place where status matters, where hierarchies are observed, and where a simple human mechanic should never find himself. But Marcus Chen isn't just any mechanic, and this isn't just any journey. What begins as an act of spontaneous generosity will ripple across the galaxy, challenging assumptions, forging impossible alliances, and proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't found in plasma cannons or quantum drives, but in the inexplicable human capacity for compassion. This is the story of how one moment of kindness between strangers became the foundation of legends, and how a tired mechanic's simple gesture would forever change the relationship between humanity and the ancient Draconian Empire. Marcus Chen pressed his calloused palm against the viewport of the Stellar Majesty, watching distant stars blur into streaks of light as the massive cruise ship jumped through hyperspace. The cramped quarters of Deck 7 felt more like a storage closet than passenger accommodations, but it was what his mechanic's salary could afford for the journey from the Kepler station shipyards back to Earth. The 28-year-old human had spent the last 3 years working on military vessels in the outer systems, fixing everything from life support systems to quantum drives. His coveralls were clean but worn, bearing patches from a dozen different ships he'd served on. The calluses on his hands told stories of countless hours wielding plasma torches and molecular wrenches, keeping humanity's fleet operational in the vast darkness of space. Marcus stretched his aching back and checked his chronometer. The ship had been traveling for 6 days now, and he'd grown tired of the synthetic protein meals and recycled air that came with economy-class travel. He decided to explore the ship's common areas, maybe find a better view of the stars or a decent cup of real coffee. The Stellar Majesty was one of the most luxurious passenger vessels in the galaxy, designed to cater to wealthy travelers from across the Galactic Coalition. As Marcus made his way through the corridors, the differences between the ship's levels became increasingly apparent. The walls grew more elegant, the lighting warmer, and the air somehow fresher as he moved upward through the decks. He found himself in the first-class lounge on Deck 3, a magnificent space with floor-to-ceiling viewports that offered stunning views of the cosmic tapestry outside. Comfortable seating areas were arranged throughout the lounge, and Marcus could see passengers from various species enjoying drinks and conversation. There were Altarian diplomats with their distinctive blue skin and silver hair, a group of Centaurian merchants discussing trade routes, and, in one corner, sitting alone, a figure that made Marcus stop in his tracks. The dragon was magnificent even in apparent distress. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with deep emerald scales that caught the light like precious gems, the creature commanded attention simply by existing. Ancient scars crisscrossed the dragon's arms and neck, telling tales of battles fought across the cosmos. The being wore what appeared to be a military uniform, though Marcus couldn't identify the specific rank or service branch. What struck Marcus most wasn't the dragon's imposing presence, but the obvious pain etched across the creature's reptilian features. The dragon's left leg was elevated awkwardly, and Marcus could see the telltale signs of someone dealing with chronic injury. The being's golden eyes held a weariness that spoke of more than just physical discomfort. Marcus had worked alongside many different species during his years in the outer systems. He'd learned that pain was universal, regardless of whether someone had scales, fur, or skin. Without really thinking about it, he approached the dragon's seating area. "Excuse me," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle the massive being. "I couldn't help but notice you seem uncomfortable." "I'm Marcus, by the way." The dragon's golden eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made Marcus's breath catch. For a moment, he worried he'd made a terrible mistake. Dragons were known throughout the galaxy for their pride and their warrior culture. Approaching one uninvited could be seen as an insult. "I am Korvash Thalvakar," the dragon replied, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate through Marcus's chest. "And, yes, human, I am experiencing some discomfort." an old injury that troubles me during long journeys.
Marcus nodded sympathetically. I've got experience with that kind of thing. Spent 3 years working on ships in low-gravity environments, and it wreaked havoc on my back.
The seating in economy class isn't exactly designed for comfort during extended travel. Corvash's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Marcus with new interest. You work on ships?
Mechanic, Marcus confirmed.
Just finished a tour maintaining the fleet at Kepler Station. Nothing glamorous, but someone has to keep the ships running. He gestured toward Corvash's leg.
That injury looks serious. How long have you been dealing with it?
For a moment, Corvash seemed uncertain how to respond. Dragons weren't accustomed to such direct questions about their physical condition, especially from members of other species.
73 years, he finally answered. A battle injury from the Void Wars.
The medical technology of that era could repair the bone, but not perfectly.
Marcus winced in sympathy. 73 years of dealing with that? I can't imagine.
The seats down in economy are basically torture devices even for healthy passengers. I bet they're murder on an old injury like that. The accommodations in first class are significantly more comfortable, Corvash admitted, his tone suggesting this was merely a statement of fact rather than a complaint. Marcus glanced around the luxurious lounge, taking in the plush seating and obvious comfort of the first-class area. An idea began to form in his mind, one that his friends would probably call crazy. But Marcus had never been particularly concerned with what other people thought was reasonable. Look, this might sound strange, Marcus began, but I've got a first-class seat. Won it in a poker game with some transport pilots back at Kepler Station. I was going to use it, but, honestly, I'm perfectly comfortable in economy. If it would help your injury, you're welcome to take my seat. The silence that followed Marcus's offer was profound.
Corvash stared at him with an expression that Marcus couldn't quite read.
The dragon's golden eyes seemed to search Marcus's face for some sign of deception or hidden motive.
You offer me your first-class accommodations? Corvash asked slowly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard.
Sure, Marcus replied with a shrug.
I mean, I'm not using them to their full potential anyway.
I sleep pretty much anywhere, and the view is just as good from economy.
If the better seating would help with your injury, it seems like the practical thing to do.
You do not know me, Corvash pointed out, his voice carrying a note of confusion.
We have never met before this moment. I am not human, nor am I your species ally in any formal sense. Why would you make such an offer?
Marcus considered the question seriously. I guess because you're in pain, and I can do something about it.
Doesn't seem more complicated than that.
The dragon was quiet for a long time, studying Marcus with those intense golden eyes. Finally, Corvash spoke, and his voice carried a weight that Marcus didn't fully understand at the time. In my 347 years of existence, human Marcus Chen, no being has ever offered me such kindness without seeking something in return.
Your species continues to confound my understanding. 347? Marcus whistled softly. Wow. You've seen a lot of history. Indeed.
I have fought in 7 major conflicts, served in diplomatic missions across 42 star systems, and held command positions in the Draconian Imperial Fleet.
I have been honored by emperors and feared by enemies.
Yet I have never encountered generosity quite like this.
Marcus felt a bit embarrassed by the dragon's formal tone. Really, it's not that big a deal.
I just figured we're all stuck on this ship together for the next couple of weeks.
Might as well make the journey as comfortable as possible for everyone.
It is a very big deal to me, Corvash said quietly. You offer comfort to ease the pain of an old warrior's wounds, asking nothing in return.
This is unexpected.
The two spent the next hour talking, and Marcus found himself fascinated by Corvash's stories. The dragon had indeed lived through centuries of galactic history, witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations, the establishment of trade routes that now connected distant worlds, and conflicts that had shaped the current political landscape. Corvash, for his part, seemed equally intrigued by Marcus's more modest experiences. The dragon asked detailed questions about ship maintenance, showing a surprising interest in the technical aspects of keeping spacecraft operational. Marcus discovered that Corvash had once served as an engineering officer early in his career, before advancing to command positions. The quantum resonance chambers require constant calibration, Marcus explained as he described his work on the fleet's newer vessels. Most people think it's just about replacing parts when they break, but there's a lot of preventive maintenance involved. You have to understand how all the systems work together. Yes, Corvash agreed, nodding slowly. In my engineering days, I learned that ships are living things in their own way. They require care and attention, not just repair when damaged. As the conversation continued, Marcus began to understand that his offer meant more to Corvash than simple physical comfort. The Dragon's stories revealed a culture where strength and honor were paramount, where showing weakness or accepting help could be seen as shameful. For Corvash to accept Marcus's offer would be significant in ways that went beyond the practical benefits of better seating. I cannot simply take your accommodations, Corvash finally said. Honor demands that I offer something in return. Marcus waved dismissively. No need for that. Really? There is every need, Corvash insisted. You may not understand the cultural implications, but for me to accept such generosity without reciprocation would be problematic. However, if you were to accept my economy class quarters in exchange, then it becomes a fair trade between travelers. Marcus could see the importance of this distinction to the dragon, even if he didn't fully understand the cultural nuances involved. If that makes you more comfortable accepting, then, sure. We can call it a trade. A trade, Corvash agreed, relief evident in his voice. Between equals undertaking a journey together. They made the arrangements through the ship's passenger services, a process that required some explanation to the confused staff members who couldn't understand why a human would want to trade down to economy accommodations. By evening, Corvash had moved into Marcus's former first-class quarters, while Marcus had settled into the Dragon's much more cramped economy space. The physical discomfort of the smaller space didn't bother Marcus much, but he quickly discovered that being the only human in the economy section's predominantly non-human demographic created its own challenges. The other passengers seemed suspicious of his presence, wondering what a human was doing in their section and whether he might be some kind of spy or troublemaker. Marcus dealt with the suspicion by doing what he did best, focusing on practical problems. When an elderly Regelian couple struggled with their malfunctioning environmental controls, Marcus quietly fixed the issue using techniques he'd learned maintaining ship systems. When a group of young Procyans worried about strange vibrations in their cabin, Marcus identified and corrected a minor structural resonance problem. Word of his helpfulness spread through the economy section, and gradually the suspicion gave way to acceptance and even appreciation. Marcus found himself becoming an unofficial technical consultant for his fellow passengers, helping with everything from personal devices to cabin maintenance issues. Meanwhile, Corvash was experiencing something entirely different in first class. The improved seating and accommodations had indeed helped significantly with his chronic pain, allowing him to rest more comfortably than he had in years. But, more than the physical comfort, he found himself reflecting on the simple generosity that had made it possible. The Dragon began observing the other first-class passengers more carefully, noting their interactions and behaviors. He watched Altarian diplomats negotiate deals over dinner, saw Centaurian merchants calculate profits from their latest ventures, and observed the complex social hierarchies that governed life among the galaxy's elite. What struck Corvash most was the contrast between these calculated interactions and Marcus's spontaneous offer of help. In the world of galactic politics and interspecies relations, every gesture had meaning, every favor carried an obligation, and every kindness masked some underlying agenda. Marcus's behavior didn't fit any of these patterns. 3 days after their arrangement began, Corvash sought out Marcus in the economy section. He found the human surrounded by a small group of passengers, explaining how to recalibrate a gravity generator that had been producing uneven fields. The key is understanding that the gravity matrix isn't uniform, Marcus was saying, his hands moving to illustrate the concept. You've got to compensate for the variations in field density, otherwise you get these wobbles in certain areas of the room. Corvash watched as Marcus demonstrated the proper calibration sequence, noting how the other passengers listened attentively to his explanation. When Marcus finished his impromptu lesson, Corvash approached. "Marcus Chen," the dragon said formally.
might I speak with you privately?
The passengers cleared space for Corvash, their respect for the dragon evident in their deferential behavior. Marcus wiped his hands on a spare cloth and nodded.
Of course. What's on your mind?
They found a quiet corner of the common area, away from the other passengers. Corvash seemed to struggle with how to begin the conversation.
I have been observing the interactions among the first-class passengers, Corvash finally said.
I wanted to better understand the culture of those who can afford such luxury.
Marcus nodded, waiting for the dragon to continue.
What I discovered, Corvash went on, is that their world operates on principles very different from what you demonstrated when you offered me your quarters. Everything is calculated, measured, weighed against potential benefits.
Kindness is a tool used to achieve specific ends.
That sounds pretty cynical, Marcus observed. Perhaps. But it is the reality of power and politics at the galactic level, which makes your behavior all the more remarkable.
Corvash's golden eyes fixed on Marcus with that same intense scrutiny. Tell me honestly, Marcus Chin, what do you hope to gain from helping me? Marcus considered the question seriously. I guess I hope you'll be more comfortable for the rest of the trip. That's about it. No hidden agenda? No desire to curry favor with the Draconian Empire? No hope that I might prove useful to you in some future endeavor?
None of that even occurred to me, Marcus admitted. I saw someone in pain, and I had the means to help.
Seemed like the right thing to do.
Corvash was quiet for a long moment.
You have given me much to think about, human.
Your species' approach to interacting with others is unique in my experience. We're not all the same, Marcus pointed out.
Plenty of humans are just as calculating as those first-class passengers you've been watching.
But I was raised to believe that if you can help someone without hurting yourself, you should do it.
A simple philosophy, Corvash mused. Simple doesn't mean easy, Marcus replied. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what the right thing is.
But, in this case, it seemed pretty clear. As their conversation continued, Corvash began to share more about his own background and the cultural context that made Marcus's gesture so significant. The dragon explained the complex honor codes that governed Draconian society, the emphasis on strength and self-sufficiency that made accepting help difficult, and the long history of conflict and competition that had shaped relationships between different species. For centuries, the interactions between our peoples have been defined by careful negotiation and measured exchange, Corvash explained. When humans first made contact with the Draconian Empire, both sides approached the relationship with extreme caution. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic protocol, every cultural exchange has been the subject of extensive deliberation. Marcus listened with growing interest as Corvash described the formal processes that govern interspecies relations. It was a world far removed from his own experience fixing ships and solving practical problems.
It sounds exhausting, Marcus commented. All that calculation and protocol. How do you ever relax and just enjoy someone's company?
That is not a concept that translates well in diplomatic circles, Corvash admitted.
Relaxation implies vulnerability, and vulnerability can be exploited. But, you're relaxed now, Marcus pointed out. At least, you seem to be. Corvash considered this observation. Yes. I suppose I am.
You present no threat that I can identify, harbor no agenda that I can detect, and offer nothing but genuine conversation. It is refreshing. The two continued talking for several more hours, sharing stories and perspectives from their very different lives. Marcus learned about the dragon's military service, his experiences in various conflicts, and his current role as a diplomatic observer traveling between star systems. Corvash heard about Marcus's childhood on Earth, his decision to pursue a career in ship maintenance, and his experiences working alongside different species in the outer systems. By the time they parted that evening, both had gained a new appreciation for the other's perspective. Marcus had a better understanding of the complex political realities that governed galactic society, while Corvash had encountered a refreshingly uncomplicated approach to human interaction. What neither of them realized at the time was that their conversation had been observed by other passengers, both in economy and first class. Word of the unusual friendship between the human mechanic and the draconian veteran began to spread throughout the ship, generating curiosity and speculation about the nature of their relationship. Some passengers assumed Marcus was attempting to gain some advantage through his association with Corvash. Others wondered if the dragon was conducting some kind of intelligence-gathering operation. A few recognized the interaction for what it actually was, a simple connection between two individuals who had found common ground despite their very different backgrounds. As Marcus settled into his borrowed economy quarters that night, he reflected on the day's conversations. He'd learned more about galactic politics in a few hours than in his entire previous career, but what struck him most was how lonely Corvash's life seemed. The dragon's stories revealed an existence defined by duty, honor, and formal relationships, with little room for the kind of casual friendships that Marcus took for granted. Meanwhile, in first class, Corvash found himself experiencing the most comfortable rest he'd had in decades. The pain in his leg had diminished significantly thanks to the superior seating and accommodations, but, more importantly, he felt a sense of peace that had been absent from his life for far too long. For the first time in years, Corvash allowed himself to simply enjoy the moment without calculating potential threats or political implications. As he drifted off to sleep, the dragon found himself looking forward to continuing his conversations with Marcus Chen, the human who had shown him that kindness could exist without hidden motives. Neither passenger could have imagined that their simple exchange would soon attract attention far beyond the confines of the stellar majesty, setting in motion events that would resonate across the galaxy. The morning of the seventh day brought unexpected visitors to Marcus's economy quarters. He awoke to find three beings waiting in the common area outside his cabin: a Centaurian merchant with silver skin and elaborate jewelry, an Altarian diplomat in formal robes, and a human businessman whose expensive suit marked him as someone from the corporate upper echelons.
Mr. Chen? The human stepped forward, extending his hand. I'm Director James Wellington from Prometheus Industries. We understand you've been fraternizing with certain passengers in first class. Marcus shook the offered hand cautiously. If by fraternizing you mean having conversations, then, yes. Is there a problem with that? The Centaurian merchant, whose translator device gave his words a metallic edge, interjected before Wellington could respond. The problem, human, is that you are disrupting established social protocols. Your inappropriate interaction with the draconian observer is creating complications. Complications for whom? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. The Altarian diplomat, a tall being with blue-tinged skin and silver hair, spoke in carefully modulated tones. Mr. Chen, you may not realize the significance of your actions, but Corvash Thelvacher is not merely a passenger. He is a highly respected figure within the Draconian Empire, traveling on official business to observe human colonial operations in the Centauri system. Marcus felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. I didn't know he was on official business. He never mentioned that. Of course he didn't, Wellington said impatiently. Dragons don't casually discuss state business with civilians. The question is, what are you really after? What's your angle in befriending him? There's no angle, Marcus protested. I offered him my seat because he was in pain. We've had some interesting conversations since then. That's literally all there is to it. The three visitors exchanged glances that suggested they found his explanation hard to believe. Mr. Chen, the Altarian diplomat said gently, I represent the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. In my experience, humans do not typically offer valuable accommodations to unknown aliens without some underlying motivation. Perhaps you were hoping to gain information about draconian military capabilities? Or seeking to establish a business relationship? Marcus looked between the three faces, seeing suspicion and calculation in all of them. You really can't believe that someone might just be trying to help another person who's hurting? In diplomatic circles, the Centaurian merchant said flatly, kindness without purpose is considered either naive or deceptive. Given humanity's reputation for cunning, deception seems more likely. The accusation stung more than Marcus expected. What exactly are you asking me to do? Wellington leaned forward. Stop whatever game you're playing. Return to your original quarters, avoid further contact with the dragon, and let the diplomatic process proceed without interference from amateur enthusiasts. And, if I don't?
Then, we'll be forced to assume your intentions are hostile, the Altarian diplomat said with regret.
The Galactic Diplomatic Corps takes a dim view of unauthorized intelligence gathering operations. Marcus felt anger building in his chest.
This is ridiculous.
You're talking about a friendship like it's some kind of conspiracy. Friendship? The Centaurian's metallic laugh was unpleasant. Humans and dragons do not have friendships.
They have alliances, trade agreements, and military treaties.
Personal relationships across species lines are rare and, usually politically motivated.
After the three visitors left, Marcus sat in his borrowed quarters feeling frustrated and confused. He'd never thought of his interaction with Corvash as anything more than two people getting to know each other, but apparently the galaxy operated by different rules than he was used to. His brooding was interrupted by a soft chime from his door announcer. Marcus opened it to find Corvash standing in the corridor, his massive frame barely fitting in the economy section's narrower passages.
Marcus Chen, the dragon said formally. I believe we need to speak.
They made their way to one of the common areas, where Corvash's presence immediately drew attention from the other economy passengers. The dragon seemed uncomfortable with the cramped spaces and curious stares, but he persevered until they found a relatively private corner. I have been informed, Corvash began, that our association is causing concern among certain passengers and crew members.
Yeah, I got a visit from some very official people this morning, Marcus said. They seem to think I'm running some kind of spy operation.
Corvash's golden eyes flashed with something that might have been anger.
They accused you of espionage? Not directly, but they strongly suggested that no human would befriend a dragon without ulterior motives.
Marcus met Corvash's gaze.
They want me to stop talking to you and return to my original quarters.
The dragon was silent for a long moment, and Marcus could see emotions playing across his reptilian features. When Corvash finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of sadness that caught Marcus off guard.
Perhaps they are right, Corvash said quietly.
Perhaps it would be better if we ended our association before it creates more difficulties.
Is that what you want? Marcus asked.
What I want has never been particularly relevant to my duties, Corvash replied.
I am here as an observer for the Draconian Empire. My personal feelings should not interfere with diplomatic protocols.
Marcus felt a surge of frustration.
But, what do you actually want? Forget about duties and protocols and what other people expect. What do you personally want to do?
Corvash looked at him with an expression of surprise, as if the question had never occurred to him.
I want to continue our conversations. I want to learn more about your perspective on the galaxy. I want to understand how someone can offer kindness without seeking advantage.
Then, that's what we'll do, Marcus said firmly.
You do not understand the implications, Corvash protested.
If our association is perceived as inappropriate, it could damage diplomatic relationships between our species. The consequences could extend far beyond this ship.
Let me worry about the consequences, Marcus said. I'm not a diplomat or a politician. I'm just a mechanic who made a friend.
If that causes problems for important people, maybe they need to reconsider their priorities. Corvash studied Marcus's face intently.
You would risk diplomatic complications for the sake of personal friendship? I would stick by my friends, yes. That's what friends do.
The dragon's expression shifted, and Marcus saw something he hadn't expected, wonder. Your species truly is remarkable, Corvash said softly. In 300 years, I have never encountered such loyalty offered so freely. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of ship security, two burly humans in uniform who approached their table with official efficiency.
Mr. Chen, the senior security officer said, we need you to come with us. Captain's orders.
Marcus glanced at Corvash, who had immediately reverted to a formal, military bearing.
Am I under arrest or something?
Just need to have a chat with the captain, the officer replied.
Nothing dramatic.
As they escorted Marcus through the ship's corridors, he caught glimpses of other passengers watching the proceedings with obvious interest. Word of the security involvement was clearly spreading rapidly through the ship's social networks. Captain Elena Rodriguez was a seasoned spacer whose weathered face spoke of decades spent navigating both cosmic hazards and political complexities. Her office reflected her practical nature, with charts and technical displays taking precedence over decorative elements. "Sit down, Mr. Chen," she said without preamble. "We have a situation that needs addressing." Marcus took the offered chair, noting that the captain seemed more tired than angry.
"What kind of situation?"
"The kind where I have diplomatic representatives from 3 different species demanding that I take action regarding your friendship with passenger Thelvacher," Rodriguez said. "They're suggesting that your behavior constitutes a security risk."
"A security risk for talking to someone?" Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Chen, I've been running passenger ships for 22 years.
I've seen every kind of political intrigue, social manipulation, and diplomatic crisis you can imagine. What I haven't seen before is a simple friendship causing this level of concern among the galactic diplomatic community. Because they can't believe it's actually just friendship," Marcus said.
"Exactly."
The captain studied him carefully.
"The question is, are they right to be suspicious?"
Marcus met her gaze directly. "Captain, I swear to you that I have no agenda beyond enjoying the company of someone I find interesting and helping him with an old injury.
If that makes me a security risk, then the galaxy has bigger problems than anything I might do."
Rodriguez was quiet for several minutes, apparently weighing her options.
Finally, she spoke. "Here's what's going to happen.
I'm not going to order you to stop interacting with passenger Thelvacher, because I don't see any evidence that you've actually done anything wrong. However, I am going to document this entire situation in my official log, including the fact that multiple diplomatic representatives have expressed concerns about your behavior."
"That seems fair," Marcus said. "Don't thank me yet," Rodriguez warned.
"I'm also going to make it clear to you that if any actual security incidents arise from your friendship, the consequences will be severe. The Stellar Majesty carries passengers from dozens of different species, and maintaining peace aboard this ship is my responsibility."
"I understand." "I hope you do," the captain said. "Because what you may not realize is that your simple gesture of kindness has already attracted attention far beyond this ship. Reports of your interaction with Thelvacher have been transmitted to various diplomatic missions, and people in very high places are beginning to take notice." Marcus felt a chill. "What kind of attention?"
"The kind that can change your life in ways you're not prepared for," Rodriguez said.
"Dragons have long memories and strong concepts of honor.
If Corvash Thelvacher speaks favorably of his experience with humanity because of your friendship, it could influence policy decisions affecting billions of people.
Conversely, if something goes wrong, the stakes get that high just from 2 people being friends? Welcome to galactic politics, Mr. Chen. Nothing is simple when it involves relationships between species."
As Marcus made his way back to the economy section, he found himself wrestling with the implications of what the captain had told him. He'd thought he was simply helping someone in pain, but apparently his actions had already created ripples that were spreading far beyond the ship. He discovered Corvash waiting in the economy common area, having drawn a small crowd of curious passengers who were pretending not to stare at the magnificent dragon.
When Marcus appeared, Corvash stood immediately. "How did your meeting with the captain proceed?"
Corvash asked. "She basically told me I'm free to continue our friendship, but warned me that it's attracting attention from important people," Marcus said. "She also mentioned that dragons have long memories."
"Indeed we do," Corvash confirmed.
"Which is why I must tell you something important, Marcus Chen. Our interactions have been observed and reported not only to ship's officials, but to representatives of various governments and diplomatic missions." The crowd of passengers had grown larger, and Marcus could see that their conversation was being recorded by several individuals. He realized that their friendship had somehow become a public spectacle. "Maybe we should talk somewhere more private," Marcus suggested.
Corvash nodded and led the way to a smaller observation lounge that was temporarily unoccupied. Once they were alone, the dragon's formal demeanor relaxed slightly.
"Marcus, there is something you must understand about my presence on this ship," Corvash began. "I am not merely a passenger taking a leisure cruise.
I am traveling to the Centauri system as an official observer for the Draconian Empire."
My mission is to assess human colonial operations and report back to my government.
Marcus felt a sinking sensation. So our friendship really is a diplomatic complication. More than you know, Corvash confirmed.
The Draconian Empire has been cautious in our relationships with humanity. Your species' rapid expansion and technological advancement has created some concerns among my people.
There are factions within the Empire who view humans as a potential threat. And now they're watching how you interact with me as some kind of test case? In a sense, yes. My observations and reports will influence how the Empire approaches future relationships with humanity. If I return with positive impressions of human character and intentions, it could open doors to greater cooperation. If not, Marcus sat down heavily. So no pressure or anything.
Corvash moved to sit beside him, his massive frame making the furniture creak. I want you to understand that none of this changes my genuine appreciation for your kindness. Your offer of help came from a pure place, and our friendship has enriched my understanding of your species in ways I could not have anticipated. But there are those who will try to use our association for their own purposes. Some will claim that your kindness proves humanity's worthiness as galactic partners. Others will argue that you're simply more skilled at manipulation than previous humans they've encountered. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of unexpected responsibility. I never wanted to be anyone's symbol for anything. Unfortunately, that choice may no longer be yours to make, Corvash said gently. The story of a human mechanic offering his first-class seat to an injured dragon veteran has already begun spreading through galactic communication networks. By the time we reach our destination, it will be known throughout the coalition. Why does this one incident matter so much? Corvash considered his answer carefully. Because it challenges assumptions that have guided interspecies relationships for centuries. Most contact between our peoples has been through official channels, with carefully negotiated protocols governing every interaction. What you did was unscripted, spontaneous, and apparently selfless. That combination is almost unknown in diplomatic circles. But it's not unknown among regular people, is it? Marcus asked. I mean, ordinary beings from different species must help each other sometimes without making it into a big political statement. Less often than you might think, Corvash admitted. The galaxy is a vast place, and most species tend to associate primarily with their own kind. Interspecies friendships like ours are genuinely rare. They were interrupted by an announcement over the ship's communication system. Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the lounge with crisp authority. Attention all passengers. Due to increased interest in passenger interactions aboard this vessel, I am implementing additional security protocols. All conversations between passengers of different species in public areas may be monitored and recorded. Passengers who wish to maintain privacy in their associations are advised to utilize private quarters. Marcus and Corvash exchanged glances, understanding the implications immediately. Their friendship was now officially under surveillance. It appears our association has become a matter of galactic interest, Corvash observed. More than I ever wanted, Marcus said. Look, if this is causing you problems with your mission, I can back off. I don't want to mess up important diplomatic stuff because I couldn't mind my own business. Corvash's golden eyes fixed on Marcus with surprising intensity. Do you believe that our friendship has value? Of course I do. Then, do not consider withdrawing from it simply because others find it inconvenient, Corvash said firmly. What we have discovered in our conversations has significance beyond the immediate concerns of diplomats and politicians. What do you mean? I mean that in 300 years of life, I have never encountered someone who offered help without calculation. Your simple act of kindness has forced me to reconsider assumptions about human nature that I have held for decades. That reconsideration will inevitably influence my official observations and recommendations. Marcus felt a chill as he realized the full implications. So my personal decision to help you really could affect policy between our species? It already has, Corvash said quietly. The question now is whether that influence will be positive or negative. That evening, Marcus found himself the center of attention in the economy section's dining area. Passengers who had previously ignored him now wanted to hear about his friendship with the famous dragon diplomat. Some seemed genuinely curious about interspecies relationships, while others clearly hoped to gain some advantage from association with him. The attention made Marcus uncomfortable, but he tried to answer questions honestly while avoiding details that might compromise Corvash's mission or privacy. He found himself explaining human concepts of friendship and helpfulness to beings who seemed genuinely puzzled by the idea of selfless kindness.
"But, what do you gain from helping the dragon?" asked a young Procyon whose fur shimmered with curiosity. "Surely there must be some benefit you expect to receive."
"The benefit is seeing him more comfortable," Marcus explained for what felt like the 100th time that day.
"Sometimes helping others is its own reward."
"That makes no logical sense," declared a Vulcarian trader whose metallic skin reflected the dining area's lights.
"Resources expended without commensurate return constitute inefficient behavior."
An elderly Rigelian who had been quietly listening to the conversation finally spoke up. "Perhaps," she said in her melodious voice, "the young human operates by principles that transcend simple resource calculation." "Such as?" the Vulcarian challenged.
"Compassion," the Rigelian replied simply.
"The desire to reduce suffering wherever it is encountered, regardless of potential benefit to oneself. Compassion is a luxury that few species can afford in the competitive environment of galactic society," the Vulcarian countered. Marcus found himself defending not just his own actions, but fundamental aspects of human nature that he had always taken for granted. The experience was both exhausting and enlightening, forcing him to articulate concepts he had never previously examined in detail. Meanwhile, in the first-class section, Corvash was dealing with his own set of challenges. Diplomatic representatives who had previously treated him with respectful distance now sought him out for private conversations, each hoping to gain insight into his assessment of human character. "Surely you can see that this human's behavior is calculated to influence your mission," suggested Ambassador Vextar, a Centaurian whose silver skin gleamed with political ambition.
"The timing of his gesture, just as you begin your observations of human colonial operations, cannot be coincidental." Corvash regarded the ambassador with mild amusement. "You believe a human mechanic somehow learned of my classified mission and orchestrated this entire situation?" "Stranger things have happened in the world of interspecies diplomacy," Vextar insisted. "Human intelligence capabilities are more sophisticated than many people realize." "And you believe they would waste such sophisticated capabilities on manipulating one dragon observer? If that observer's recommendations could influence future trade relationships and territorial agreements, then, yes, absolutely." Corvash considered this perspective, trying to reconcile it with his direct experience of Marcus's character. The dragon had spent centuries navigating political intrigue and could usually detect hidden agendas with ease. Yet in all his conversations with Marcus, he had sensed nothing but genuine kindness and curiosity. "Perhaps," Corvash said carefully, "the explanation is simpler than conspiracy theories would suggest." "You truly believe this human acted without ulterior motive?"
Vextar seemed incredulous. "I believe that not every action in the galaxy is driven by political calculation," Corvash replied.
"Sometimes individuals simply choose to be kind."
The Centaurian ambassador left the conversation clearly unsatisfied, but Corvash felt confident in his assessment. His centuries of experience had taught him to trust his instincts about people, and every instinct told him that Marcus Chen was exactly what he appeared to be, a decent person who had offered help to someone in need. That confidence would soon be tested as the ship continued its journey toward destinations where the implications of an unlikely friendship would resonate far beyond anything either participant had imagined possible. The crisis began on the 10th day of their journey when the Stellar Majesty received an emergency distress signal from a mining operation in the Kepler 442 system. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's corridors as she announced the situation to all passengers.
"Attention passengers and crew. We have received a distress call from the Kepler 442 mining facility.
Their primary life support system has failed, and they have approximately 18 hours of emergency reserves remaining. As the only vessel in range capable of providing assistance, we are altering course to render aid." Marcus was in the economy section common area when the announcement came, surrounded by the usual group of passengers who had taken to gathering around him each evening to discuss interspecies relations. The mood immediately shifted from casual conversation to serious concern. "Kepler 442, murmured the elderly Rigelian who had become something of a mentor figure in their discussions. That facility processes rare minerals essential for quantum drive manufacturing. If it fails, the economic impact will be significant. More importantly, added a young Procyon engineer, there are over 300 beings working that facility. Mixed species crew, mostly miners and technical specialists. Marcus felt his mechanic instincts stirring. Life support failures were exactly the kind of emergency he'd been trained to handle during his years maintaining fleet vessels. What kind of facility is it? Industrial mining platform or integrated colony? Industrial platform, the Procyon replied. Built around a massive asteroid with rich deposits of quantum-grade materials. The platform provides housing and life support for the workers, but everything is designed for efficiency rather than redundancy. That's not good, Marcus said, already thinking through the technical implications. Industrial platforms usually have minimal backup systems. If the primary life support failed, they're probably running on emergency reserves that weren't designed for extended use. His analysis was interrupted by the arrival of Corvash, whose presence in the economy section immediately drew attention. The dragon moved with obvious difficulty in the cramped space, but his expression was grimly determined. Marcus Chen, Corvash said formally, I need to speak with you about the emergency situation. They found privacy in Marcus's quarters, where Corvash explained the fuller context of the crisis. The Kepler 442 facility is jointly operated by human, Centaurian, and Rigelian companies, Corvash began. It represents one of the most successful examples of interspecies economic cooperation in recent history. If we cannot save the workers, the political ramifications will be severe. Political ramifications? Marcus asked, though he was already beginning to understand. The facility's failure will be seen by many as evidence that interspecies cooperation is inherently unstable, Corvash explained. There are factions within the Galactic Coalition who oppose integrated operations like this, preferring that each species maintain separate facilities and infrastructure. Marcus absorbed this information while his mind automatically began working through the technical challenges they would face. What kind of support capability does the Stellar Majesty have for this type of rescue operation? Limited, Corvash admitted. This is a luxury cruise vessel, not a rescue ship. We carry basic emergency supplies and have some technical capabilities, but nothing specifically designed for major life support repairs. But, you think I might be able to help? Corvash met his gaze directly. You have experience maintaining life support systems on various types of spacecraft and facilities. Your knowledge could be crucial in determining how to best assist the trapped workers. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. I'm just one mechanic. This sounds like a job for a full engineering team with specialized equipment. We are the only ship in range, Corvash said quietly. Whatever help we can provide may be the difference between life and death for 300 beings. Within the hour, Marcus found himself in the ship's main conference room along with Captain Rodriguez, Chief Engineer Sarah Kim, and representatives from several species who possessed relevant technical expertise. The mood was grim as they reviewed the limited information available about the crisis. The Kepler 442 facility sent their last detailed transmission 3 hours ago, Captain Rodriguez reported. Primary life support failure was caused by a cascade malfunction in their atmospheric processing system. Emergency reserves are functioning, but they estimate 18 hours maximum before air quality drops below survivable levels. Chief Engineer Kim, a compact woman whose no-nonsense demeanor reminded Marcus of the best fleet engineers he'd worked with, added her assessment. We're still 42 hours away at maximum speed, even with the course alteration. By the time we arrive, they'll have been without primary life support for a full day. What about other vessels in the area? Asked Ambassador Vexstar, the Centaurian who had previously questioned Marcus's motives. None with the capability to provide meaningful assistance, Rodriguez replied. There's a cargo hauler in the next system over, but it's carrying hazardous materials and can't alter course. A Rigelian research vessel is closer, but it lacks the equipment or personnel needed for major repairs. Marcus studied the technical specifications displayed on the room's main screen. Has anyone tried to establish what specifically failed in their atmospheric processing system? Communications are limited, Kim explained. They're conserving power for life support, so they're only transmitting emergency updates every few hours.
may I suggest something?
Marcus said, feeling the attention of the room focus on him.
If we can establish a detailed communication link with their engineering team, we might be able to guide them through some repair procedures remotely.
Even if we can't fix the main system, we might be able to extend their emergency reserves or improve efficiency.
Ambassador Vexstar looked skeptical. You propose to conduct major engineering repairs by remote communication? That seems highly optimistic.
It's not ideal, Marcus admitted, but it's better than waiting until we arrive and finding everyone dead. Besides, the people working that facility are experienced engineers and technicians.
They know their systems better than we do.
Sometimes they just need someone to help them see solutions they might miss in a crisis situation.
Chief Engineer Kim nodded thoughtfully.
It's worth trying. We can boost our communication array to establish a real-time link. The question is whether their engineering staff includes anyone with the expertise to handle complex repairs under these conditions. Korvash spoke for the first time since the meeting began.
I may have relevant information about the facility's personnel.
As part of my mission, I reviewed detailed reports on interspecies cooperation projects, including Kepler 442.
Their chief engineer is a human named David Park, with 23 years of experience in life support systems. His assistant chief is a Rigelian named Yelsha who specializes in atmospheric chemistry. The facility also employs several Centaurian technicians who are experts in power distribution systems. That's a solid engineering team, Marcus said with some relief.
If we can walk them through the diagnostic and repair procedures, they should be capable of handling the actual work. Captain Rodriguez made the decision. We'll attempt remote assistance while continuing toward their position at maximum speed.
Mr. Chen, you'll work with Chief Engineer Kim to coordinate the technical support effort. Ambassador Vexstar, I'll need you to facilitate communication with the Centaurian representatives on the facility. And, Korvash. I will coordinate with the Rigelian personnel, the dragon said immediately.
My diplomatic credentials should help establish trust and cooperation.
Wait, Marcus said, realizing something important.
If we're going to provide effective technical support, we need to know exactly what equipment and spare parts they have available.
Remote repairs are only possible if they have the right components to work with. The next several hours passed in a blur of intense technical coordination.
The Stellar Majesty's communication array was reconfigured to establish a constant link with the Kepler 442 facility, allowing real-time consultation between the ship's improvised rescue team and the trapped engineers. Marcus found himself at the center of a complex three-way technical discussion, translating repair procedures between different species' engineering approaches while working with limited information about the facility's specific systems. The challenge was made more difficult by the fact that each species had developed different standards for life support technology, creating compatibility issues that had to be resolved under extreme time pressure.
Their atmospheric scrubbers are overloading because the primary circulation pumps failed, Chief Engineer Park's voice crackled through the communication link. We've got backup pumps running, but they weren't designed to handle the full circulation load. Can you reroute circulation through alternate pathways?
Marcus asked, studying the facility schematics they'd managed to transmit. Partially, but the alternate systems use different coupling mechanisms.
We'd need to fabricate adapter components. Marcus turned to Kim. Do they have a machine shop capable of precision fabrication?
They should, Kim replied. Mining facilities typically maintain extensive manufacturing capabilities for equipment repairs.
Park, this is Marcus Chen aboard the Stellar Majesty. What kind of fabrication equipment do you have available?
We've got a full machine shop with molecular assemblers and quantum welders, Park responded. But I'm not sure we have the right specifications for the adapters we'd need.
Marcus felt a spark of inspiration. What if we don't try to adapt your systems to work together? What if we create a completely new circulation pathway using components you definitely have available? Explain, Park said.
Marcus began sketching a schematic on his tablet, sharing it through the communication link. Emergency oxygen generation systems, portable atmospheric processors, and standard ventilation ducting. You should have all of these in your emergency supplies. We can create a temporary circulation system that bypasses the failed primary components entirely. There was a long pause while Park and his team reviewed the proposal. Finally, the chief engineer's voice returned with a note of cautious optimism.
That might actually work.
It would be inefficient as hell, but if it can keep us alive until you arrive.
It doesn't have to be elegant, Marcus said. It just has to work. What followed was one of the most challenging technical operations Marcus had ever participated in.
Working through the communication link, he guided the facility's engineering team through the complex process of creating an entirely new life support system using improvised components and emergency equipment. The work was complicated by the fact that the facility's mixed-species crew had to coordinate between different technical traditions and equipment standards. Rigelian atmospheric chemistry expertise had to be integrated with Centaurian power distribution knowledge and human mechanical engineering, all while working under extreme time pressure in a deteriorating environment. Corvash proved invaluable as a coordinator, using his diplomatic experience to facilitate communication between the different species' technical specialists. His centuries of experience had taught him how to translate concepts between different cultural and technical frameworks, skills that proved essential when human engineering terminology didn't have direct equivalents in Rigelian or Centaurian technical languages. The Rigelian atmospheric specialists are concerned about chemical compatibility between their scrubber compounds and the human-designed ventilation systems, Corvash reported during one of their brief planning sessions.
What kind of compatibility issues? Marcus asked.
Different atmospheric chemistry standards can create corrosion problems when systems designed for different species are integrated, Corvash explained. Rigelians use atmospheric additives that enhance their respiratory efficiency but can damage human-designed metal components over extended exposure.
Marcus turned to the communication link. Yelsha, can you modify your atmospheric compounds to use more neutral chemistry?
We only need the system to function for 24 hours.
The Rigelian engineer's response came through a translation matrix that gave her words a musical quality.
Modification possible, but will reduce efficiency of atmospheric processing by approximately 30%. That's still better than system failure, Marcus said.
Can you compensate for the reduced efficiency by increasing circulation rates? If Centaurian power distribution specialists can provide additional power routing to circulation systems, yes.
The technical challenges continued to multiply, but gradually a solution began to emerge. The facility's engineering team, guided by remote consultation from the Stellar Majesty, began constructing an improvised life support system that incorporated the best elements of 3 different species technologies. Marcus found himself working more closely with Corvash than he ever had before, as they translated technical concepts between human and dragon engineering traditions while facilitating communication with the trapped personnel. The dragon's deep knowledge of various species technologies, combined with Marcus's practical repair experience, created an unexpectedly effective partnership.
You know, Marcus said during a brief break in the technical coordination, this is probably the weirdest way I've ever made a friend. Bonding over emergency life support repairs conducted by remote communication. Corvash's expression was thoughtful.
In my experience, true partnerships are often forged in crisis situations. When beings must rely on each other's expertise to save lives, artificial barriers tend to disappear.
Is that what's happening here? Artificial barriers disappearing?
I believe so, Corvash said quietly. When I first met you, I was intrigued by your unexpected kindness. Now, working with you in this crisis, I am impressed by your competence and dedication.
You have proven that humans can be both compassionate and capable, qualities that are not always found together.
Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the facility. Chief Engineer Park's voice carried a note of barely controlled panic.
Stellar Majesty *, we have a problem.
The improvised circulation system is working, but we're getting dangerous pressure buildups in the secondary atmospheric chambers.
If we can't resolve this in the next few hours, we'll lose the whole system. Marcus felt his stomach drop.
After hours of careful work, they were facing a new crisis that could undo all their progress. What kind of pressure buildups, he asked, already running through possible causes and solutions.
Atmospheric chemistry from different species systems isn't integrating as smoothly as we hoped, Park explained.
The Rigelian compounds are reacting with trace elements in the human design chambers, creating chemical buildups that are blocking circulation pathways. Marcus looked at Corvash, seeing his own concern reflected in the dragon's golden eyes. They had pushed the limits of improvised engineering, but physics and chemistry had their own rules that couldn't be overcome by determination alone. "We need a completely different approach," Marcus said finally. "Something that doesn't depend on integrating incompatible chemical systems." "Such as?" Corvash asked. Marcus studied the facility schematics again, this time looking for alternatives they hadn't previously considered. Slowly, a new possibility began to form in his mind. "What if we don't try to create one integrated system?" he said. "What if we create separate, parallel systems for each species' atmospheric requirements?" It was a radical approach that would require even more complex coordination, but it might be their only chance to keep everyone alive until the rescue ship arrived. As Marcus began explaining his new proposal, he realized that the crisis had indeed dissolved the artificial barriers between species, forcing them to work together in ways that might have seemed impossible under normal circumstances. What none of them knew was that their improvised cooperation was being closely monitored by observers throughout the galaxy, and that the success or failure of their rescue efforts would influence interspecies relationships for decades to come. The breakthrough came at hour 16 of the crisis, just as the trapped facility's emergency reserves were beginning to show dangerous signs of depletion. Marcus's radical proposal to create parallel atmospheric systems for each species had evolved into something even more ambitious, a modular life support network that could be rapidly assembled using components already available on the mining platform. "Think of it like building a starship from scratch using spare parts," Marcus explained to the combined engineering teams through the communication link. "Instead of trying to force incompatible systems to work together, we create separate atmospheric zones connected by pressure-neutral transfer chambers." Chief Engineer Park's voice carried a note of cautious hope. "You're talking about essentially turning our facility into a multi-environment habitat. That's incredibly complex to coordinate." "But it's possible," added Yelsha, the Rigelian atmospheric specialist. "My people have experience with modular environmental systems for deep space research stations. The principles are sound, though the implementation will be challenging." Corvash had been studying the schematics on his tablet, his centuries of military engineering experience helping him identify potential problems. "The power distribution requirements alone will strain your systems beyond normal operating parameters," he pointed out. "Can your Centaurian power specialists handle that kind of load?" "If we redistribute power from non-essential systems, yes," came the reply from Tekvar, the facility's Centaurian power engineer. "But we will have no margin for error. Any additional failures could cascade into total system collapse." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. 300 lives depended on the success of an engineering solution that pushed the boundaries of what was possible under emergency conditions. But, as he looked around the Stellar Majesty's command center, seeing representatives from multiple species working together with unprecedented cooperation, he felt a surge of confidence. "We can do this," he said firmly. "But it's going to require perfect coordination between all teams. No mistakes, no miscommunication, and no second-guessing each other's expertise." What followed were the most intense 8 hours of Marcus's career. Working through the communication link, he coordinated a complex dance of engineering activities across the mining facility. Human technicians fabricated pressure-resistant barrier panels while Rigelian atmospheric specialists prepared separate chemical processing systems. Centaurian power engineers rerouted electrical systems to support multiple parallel life support networks, and Dragon-trained Draconian technicians who had joined the facility crew provided quality control and safety oversight. The modular approach required precise timing and flawless execution. Each atmospheric zone had to be sealed and tested independently before being connected to the overall network. Any failure in the sequence could contaminate the other zones or create pressure imbalances that would destroy the entire system. Marcus found himself functioning as the central coordinator, translating technical requirements between different species' engineering traditions while monitoring overall system integration. His years of experience maintaining diverse spacecraft had taught him to think in terms of interconnected systems rather than isolated components, a perspective that proved essential for managing the complex project. Zone 1 atmospheric integrity confirmed, reported Park after the human design section had been sealed and tested. Pressure holding steady, chemical composition within normal parameters.
Zone 2 shows stable Rigelian atmospheric chemistry, added Yelsha.
Enhanced oxygen processing active, trace compound levels optimal.
Zone 3 power distribution functioning normally, confirmed TechVAR. Centaurian environmental systems operating at 93% efficiency.
Corvash had been monitoring the overall coordination, and Marcus could see the Dragon's admiration for the improvised engineering solution. The integration protocols are holding, Corvash reported.
Transfer chambers maintaining pressure equilibrium between all zones.
But their success was tested when an unexpected crisis emerged. Dr. Elena Santos, the facility's chief medical officer, transmitted an urgent report that changed everything. We have 14 individuals whose atmospheric requirements don't match any of our 3 zones, Santos reported. Mixed species hybrids, beings with medical conditions requiring specialized atmospheric compositions, and 3 individuals whose species aren't represented in our current system design. Marcus felt his heart sink. They had created a solution for the majority of the facility's population, but 14 people were still in immediate danger.
Can we create additional zones? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. Negative, replied Park. We've pushed our power and space allocation to the absolute limit.
Adding more zones would destabilize the entire network. Marcus stared at the facility schematics, his mind racing through possibilities.
14 people.
14 lives depending on a solution he didn't know how to provide. It was Corvash who provided the answer. What if we don't create new zones? The dragon asked. What if we create mobile atmospheric support units that can be moved between zones as needed?
Mobile units?
Marcus wasn't sure he understood.
Personal environmental suits with extended life support capability, Corvash explained.
Each individual with specialized atmospheric needs could carry their own life support system while moving through the facility. The suits could be recharged and refilled at stations located in each zone. Yelsha's voice carried new excitement. That could work.
We have the components for personal atmospheric suits in our emergency supplies. If we modify them for extended operation, the suits would need to interface with multiple atmospheric systems, added TechVAR. Complex engineering, but possible. Marcus felt hope returning. How long would it take to modify 14 suits for extended operation?
6 hours, Park estimated.
Maybe less if we work in parallel teams.
Do it, Marcus said immediately.
We'll guide you through the modifications. The personal atmospheric suit project pushed the improvised engineering effort to its absolute limits.
Each suit had to be customized for the specific atmospheric requirements of its intended user, requiring careful chemical calibration and life support system integration. The work was made more difficult by the fact that some of the individuals requiring specialized support were already showing signs of atmospheric stress. Marcus coordinated the suit modification project while simultaneously monitoring the main atmospheric zones for signs of system strain. The parallel life support networks were functioning, but they were operating at maximum capacity with no margin for additional failures.
Suit modifications 60% complete, reported Santos after 4 hours of intensive work. But we're running into problems with 3 of the units.
The atmospheric requirements are so specialized that we can't create compatible chemical mixes with our available supplies.
Marcus felt panic beginning to build.
They were so close to saving everyone, but those 3 individuals might still die because of chemical incompatibilities beyond their ability to resolve. It was Ambassador Vextar, the Centaurian diplomat who had originally questioned Marcus's motives, who provided the unexpected solution. The Stellar Majesty carries emergency atmospheric supplies for multiple species, Vextar announced. If we can transfer those supplies to the mining facility, they might provide the specialized chemicals needed for the remaining suits. Captain Rodriguez immediately confirmed the possibility. We can configure our cargo transporters to deliver chemical supplies directly to the facility. But the transfer will take 8 hours, and their emergency reserves won't last that long.
Marcus looked at the timeline calculations on his screen. 8 hours for chemical transfer, plus 2 hours for final suit modifications. The facility's emergency reserves would be completely depleted 4 hours before the specialized suits were ready.
We need to buy them more time, Marcus said.
Is there any way to extend their emergency reserves?
Chief Engineer Kim had been quietly working through calculations on her own tablet.
What if we reduce atmospheric quality in the main zones temporarily, she suggested. Lower oxygen concentration, minimal atmospheric processing.
It would be uncomfortable, but it might reduce the overall load on the emergency reserves enough to extend their operational time. That's asking people to accept reduced life support when they're already stressed, Marcus pointed out.
But it might save 3 lives, Kim countered. Marcus turned to the communication link. Park, Santos, can you ask for volunteers? People willing to accept reduced atmospheric quality temporarily to help save the individuals who need specialized support?
The response came back within minutes, and it surprised everyone involved in the rescue operation.
Everyone volunteered, Park reported. All facility personnel are willing to accept reduced atmospheric conditions if it means saving their colleagues.
Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a recognition of the same selfless cooperation he had seen among the mixed-species engineering teams working to save the facility. People were willing to sacrifice their own comfort to help others, regardless of species differences or personal inconvenience.
Implement the reduced atmosphere protocol, Marcus decided. But monitor everyone carefully. If anyone shows signs of serious distress, we restore full life support immediately. The final 8 hours of the rescue operation tested everyone's limits.
The facility's population endured uncomfortable atmospheric conditions while the specialized chemical supplies were transferred from the Stellar Majesty. The improvised life support zones continued functioning at maximum capacity, maintained by engineering teams working in shifts around the clock. Marcus barely slept during those 8 hours, constantly monitoring system performance and coordinating with the facility teams. Korvash remained at his side throughout the vigil, providing both technical expertise and moral support as they waited to see if their improvised solution would actually save everyone. When the Stellar Majesty finally arrived at the Kepler 442 facility, they found a mining platform that had been completely transformed. The improvised life support system had evolved into something that looked more like a multi-species research station than an industrial facility. Separate atmospheric zones were connected by pressure-neutral transfer chambers, while individuals wearing modified atmospheric suits moved between areas as their work required. 314 souls aboard, reported Captain Rodriguez as the final evacuation tally was completed.
All in stable condition, though some are showing signs of stress from the extended emergency.
Marcus felt exhaustion and relief flooding through him as he watched the last of the facility personnel being transferred to the ship's medical bay for evaluation.
They had done it. Everyone had survived.
But, as he stood in the observation lounge watching the mining facility recede into space, Marcus realized that something more significant than a successful rescue had taken place. The crisis had forced beings from multiple species to work together in ways that transcended normal diplomatic and cultural boundaries. They had created solutions that none of them could have developed working alone.
You should be proud, Korvash said, joining him at the viewport. Your leadership saved 300 lives.
It wasn't just my leadership, Marcus replied.
Everyone worked together. Humans, Rigelians, Centaurians, even that draconian engineering team on the facility.
Nobody worried about species differences when lives were at stake.
No, Korvash agreed. They did not.
And that cooperation will be remembered.
What do you mean?
Korvash turned to face him, and Marcus could see something profound in the dragon's golden eyes.
The rescue operation was monitored by observers throughout the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species witnessed the level of cooperation achieved between human engineers, Rigelian atmospheric specialists, Centaurian power technicians, and others. What they saw challenges fundamental assumptions about interspecies collaboration.
Marcus began to understand the implications.
You mean this rescue operation is going to influence how species work together in the future?
It already has, Korvash confirmed.
I have received communications from my government, from Centaurian trade representatives, and from Rigelian research councils.
Everyone wants to understand how such effective cooperation was achieved under emergency conditions.
And what are you going to tell them?
Corvash was quiet for a long moment. I am going to tell them that it began with one human offering kindness to a dragon in pain, and that kindness somehow created a foundation of trust that allowed unprecedented cooperation during a life-threatening crisis. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders again. I never intended for any of this to become so important. The most significant changes often begin with small, unintended actions, Corvash said. Your simple gesture of offering me your first-class seat demonstrated that genuine cooperation between species is possible. The rescue operation proved that such cooperation can achieve remarkable results when lives depend on it. As they continued watching the stars, Marcus realized that his journey aboard the Stellar Majesty had become something much more than a simple trip home from his work assignment. He had stumbled into the middle of galactic politics and somehow emerged as an example of human potential for interspecies cooperation. The question now was what would happen when they reached their destination, and the galaxy's attention focused even more intensely on the unlikely friendship between a human mechanic and a dragon diplomat. The rescue operation had proven that different species could work together effectively, but implementing that lesson on a galactic scale would present challenges that made emergency life support repairs seem simple by comparison. The Stellar Majesty approached Centauri Station 3 days after the rescue operation, and Marcus could see immediately that their arrival was going to be anything but routine. The massive space station, one of the galaxy's busiest commercial and diplomatic hubs, was surrounded by an unusual collection of vessels. Military ships from multiple species floated alongside diplomatic transports and media vessels, all maintaining careful distances while obviously monitoring the approaching cruise ship. That's quite a reception committee, Marcus observed from the observation lounge where he and Corvash had taken to spending their evenings discussing the implications of their experience.
Indeed, Corvash agreed, his golden eyes studying the assembled fleet.
I count vessels representing at least 7 different species governments, plus what appear to be independent media organizations and trade representatives. Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the ship's corridors as she announced their approach.
All passengers prepare for arrival at Centauri Station.
Please note that standard departure procedures may be modified due to increased security and diplomatic protocols currently in effect.
Marcus felt his stomach tighten.
He'd hoped that the attention surrounding their friendship might die down after the rescue operation, but apparently the successful cooperation between species during the crisis had only intensified galactic interest in their story.
Are you prepared for what's waiting for us?
Corvash asked.
Marcus considered the question seriously.
Over the past few days, he'd received dozens of communication requests from diplomatic missions, media organizations, and academic institutions.
Everyone wanted to interview the human mechanic who had somehow catalyzed unprecedented interspecies cooperation.
I'm not sure anyone could be prepared for this level of attention, Marcus admitted.
3.